in New York supporting Kamala. Just wanted to push back on some of the narrative that we've been hearing for a couple of reasons regarding the Black voters moving in mass, and particularly Black male voters moving in mass to from Harris to Trump for a couple of reasons. One, statistical based, and the other anecdotal based. I'd like to share with the viewers to give some insights into what at least I'm seeing from within the Black community. With regard to the statistical bucket, we saw that there's a lot of polling that's coming out regarding where Black voters are coming from, and when you look into the crosstabs of it, we're seeing that like the data samples are very small, not really representative of what you would need to see to be able to constitute like a make a definitive statement one way or the other. So like we're looking for data samples of over 600 people with low margins of error, and we're seeing like data samples of like 200 people, where if you have a data sample that small, it only takes about 40 people to come up with 20%. You can move the numbers very, very dramatically with just a small amount of numbers. We also saw there was a poll last week that came out that was, I think it was Hill Emerson, had a pretty fair size of data sample that was looking at the two states where Black voters would make the most have the biggest constituency, the biggest electorate rather, are Georgia and North Carolina, where we have 29% of the electorate and 23% of the electorate respectively. And we saw that in the poll that came out last week, when compared to the 2020 numbers in Georgia, Trump won 11% of the Black vote in 2020. In North Carolina, he took 7% of the Black vote in North Carolina. As compared to the polling that came out last week, we saw that 11% advantage, the 11% that Trump had is down a point. It's down to 10% currently in 2024. And in North Carolina, it's down from 7 to 6%. And so there's not movement there on the data that would suggest this in mass movement that we're seeing. And so which brings me to my anecdotal point that I wanted to share. Just by way of background, I'm on the board of a lot of Black organizations, founded several organizations. A member of a historically Black fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, similar to the sorority that Kamala's a part of. We have 200, just by way of example, there are 250,000 Black men in my fraternity. We have our own internal chat groups where tens of thousands of us are talking about these issues every single day, all times of the night and day. I was on the call with the brothers who, the Win with Black Men organization led by Khalil Thompson, that had the call on July 22nd. That was discussing this, where over 50,000 Black men joined and were expressing their support for Kamala. And you will see in those rooms, and this is the part I want to share with the listeners who, your non-Black listeners, is the support there is people are proud to support and enthusiastic to support Kamala. Now, because Black people are not a monolith and we have diversity of thought, you will see people who are supporting Trump, and that's fine. We understand that, but I want to say that in my own fraternity, for example, we're talking about brothers from 18 to over 80, and across the board, generationally, it is support for Kamala in those rooms, and the support that you're going to see, I think you will still see a handful of folks Black men who support Trump, and like I said, that's all right, but there's still a fundamental difference in ideology and culture from what we're hearing from the Trump campaign and what aligns with, like, I think, Black culture, where he's saying things that are demonstrably false that don't resonate with Black voters, I think is where he gets into trouble. Things like Haitians are eating cats and dogs, things like all Black people live in poverty, your schools are, no good. What the hell do you have to lose, as he said in 2016 during one rally. And so, the problems with that is those are things that the average lay voter can just look around and see don't align with their reality. So only 17% of Black people live in poverty. Now, mind you, that's a pretty high number as compared to other races, but that means 83% of us are not living in poverty. So when you say all Black people live in poverty, that just doesn't jive with the reality that we can look around and see for ourselves. And so those things don't ring true. And so I just want to point that out, that there's certainly, I think, a move there. I wouldn't say there's an en masse movement. These are the same numbers that we've seen in 2020 that we see today. And so there's a narrative that I think the mainstream media is pushing to be more sensational and get clicks and get views and the like. And that's their agenda. And we understand that. But I just want to say that, since we try to get into the weeds of what's actually happening in on this platform, share those anecdotes and some of those stats, because it doesn't align the en masse movement that the mainstream media would have you believe is out there. We're just not seeing that. It doesn't align with our lived experience.
So thank you for sharing that. I just want to make 3 quick points to play off what you said, and then a third to number one. I think I want to give context to what people are saying to Conway, because I think it's a really interesting point that he's making. But like, if you do a poll of 500 people, right? So the plus or minus, I think, is like 5 or 6 on a 500 sample, right? So what Conway's saying, when you ask people initially, how old are you married or not? One of the times you'll say is, do you identify as white, Asian, black, whatever, right? So when they pull out the 32 or 41 people that are black or Asian or whatever, that's not a statistically significant sample to actually extrapolate from, right? And so he's making a good point here, which I just want everyone to understand. I think, at least, I don't want words in Conway's mouth, but like, why that makes so much sense, because a lot of times the media will jump on a poll like that because of the crosstab, but it is not what the pollsters consider statistically significant enough to extrapolate, right? Secondly, exit polls are the same way. Republicans don't answer exit polls the same way, because that's after you go out and vote, the media will send out people to random polling places and say, will you do a survey with us? So some of this data is a little flawed from the jump. But I will say, look, I've never seen so many young black men in particular so vocally make their views known voting for a Republican than I have this cycle. Now, again, that's not statistically significant either. That's anecdotal, but I've just never seen it to the level that we have. Now, maybe it's just because technology has evolved and you can see it the way that you haven't in the past. We'll know more in 21 days. But the last point I'd make is this: the media has no interest in making this an issue, right? This is not helpful to the cause. Secondly, it's people on the left who are ringing the bell as well. It's not like the Trump campaign is out there saying this. And then this is the last point, which is, I get our party still sucks with people of color. So going from 17 to 24 is still an F. But
yeah,
if we're making progress, I think that's a good thing, right? So 24% of any demographic is not good. It's, and my kid came home and said, hey, don't worry, Dad, I got a 24, and last time I got a 15. I'd still say, you got a lot of work to do, son.
Got a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Right.
No, and one thing on that point, real quick, just I think what you are seeing generationally is that the Gen Z, they view things through the Gen Z lens. They are more removed from that civil rights movement from the 64 and 65 Voting Rights Act, that era. Such that they're not taking a lot of the things that we take as a given. They're not accepting those as a given. They don't accept. They don't like how Biden handled Gaza. They don't accept that. Democrats are supposed to just vote for Democrats, and so they're more critical of the Democratic Party, which I think is great, and expressing a real frustration that I think a lot of Black people have with the return on investment that they've seen or not seen from the Democratic Party. And I think that's a completely legitimate criticism to have. But it doesn't go so far as to say, because I'm having this disagreement with a party that I can move my agenda through, therefore I'm going to go over here to the other side who's saying that I eat dogs and cats.
No, Conway, thank you for coming on. Like, you great words. The only thing I would just kind of disagree a little bit is, it is a problem, which is why the Harris campaign and Barack Obama and everybody is jumping, out and kind of throwing ideas and messaging to a specific community. Like, there is some drift, primarily with non-college educated Blacks. But to your point, Harris is likely still to win 70, 75%.